Well, welcome everybody to Brimpts Farm. We're going to run a little film in a second, and I want to give you a quick overview of what we're about here, really. We're part of the Duchy Cornwall estate. Prince William now, obviously. They've had this farm since 1337. Fairly big landlords up here, some 60,000 acres, to be honest. But the whole estate is about 150,000 acres, so quite influential. I'm not quite sure how you feel about the royals, but they've left us alone pretty well over the years, and we've been here now nearly 60 years on this farm, and they've allowed us really to be quite open and diverse from how we approach how we want to farm. So that's been a big opportunity for myself. I've been sort of farming here since mid-80s with my father, who retired then, and I had the free hand. But my mother was the clever one, I must say, because she opened a tea room in 75 and all these different areas of diversification. It was a great insight in what you can do with the farm, I feel, and the environment. So we're going to run this film. This is called The Seven Seas, actually, and it's available. It's just come out on YouTube from the Duchy. They've chosen 7 farms across the estate, 2 farms on Dartmeet, which is Brimpts and Huckabee next door. And it's just giving a little bit of insight what the future they're thinking would be working with us, the tenants, on their focus farms. So it's a big opportunity for not just us, but the Duchy, so we can now work together. They've chosen these farms mainly because we're already gone down the road of environmental management, diversification in our case, but we've got flower meadows going back for the last 50, 60 years we've been playing with. So it's a great opportunity, and I think William will make quite a different change from Charles, believe it or not. And Charles was for very proactive farming. This is an opportunity, and it would be great. You're welcome to. We'll send the link, I do believe, later anyway. So, like you say, we're very lucky. It's a 700-acre farm here. We run from 800 feet down by the river up to about 1,400, up towards Larter or Bellevator, up that way. We still keep cattle. That's our grazing tool, really, our environmental tool. It's important that we do have animals on farms. You just can't close a farm down and say, well, what a wonderful environment. Dartmoor is a man-made environment, believe it or not. Farming goes back here thousands of years. If you look across the valley here, you will see Bronze Age field plans and all that. So it's, very lucky place to live, and I appreciate it. Like Ian, I'm a great traveller. I've just come back this morning at 3 o'clock, to be fair, from Portugal and everywhere. Climate change down there is phenomenal. Fires beyond belief, and all that. So things are changing. We must address that. But anyway, I'm going on. I met Ian a few years ago. He was looking at his upgrade, upcycling glass and all this sort of stuff. And one of the things he was looking for was bracken ash. And I thought, we've got plenty of bracken. And it was a Roman recipe, I do believe you sort of found. And I was intrigued. And so come along and we cut some green bracken and we made this ash and all everything. And yeah, so it's been exciting, as you can see from what he's been doing here. But Ian's going to talk about that and everything. So lots going on scientifically. We're going to hear a talk from Sarah in a minute. So it's going to be, an interesting afternoon for you. So welcome to Brimpts. You're more than welcome to walk around it and see what you want to see on the farm. We have an open access policy. I'm not going to talk anymore because I'm just going to run this little film and I'll pass on. Thank you. What I'm most proud of on the farm really is the diversity we've created. I think we had the bravery to drop the production side and focus on the environmental approach to the farm. Lichens there, look at that.
Yeah, well, that shows how clean the air is, obviously, on Dartmoor. Well, this is the temperate rainforest, we now call it. Used to just call it woodland. But temperate rainforest is what Dartmoor's important for because the trees drip with water most of the year. So all these mosses and the lichens that grow, it's perfect conditions for that. Yeah. These ancient trees are they're beautiful, aren't they? Let's go a whole carpet of moss.
This is where we've done the meadow development here, wasn't it?
So you used your own green hay just to boost the growth of all the different flowers?
It's having that battle of keeping it grazed, so you trample the bracken out or work on the bracken, but also allowing your flower meadow species to thrive. So we don't want to graze it too early. So we haven't touched it yet, but boy, we always traditionally used to run the cattle down here early, and they would eat this out fairly well. So it's interesting when we're looking at developing this area or reintroducing the species, well, they were already there really, within reason. Just by changing that little bit of management, I've seen that thrive.
So there's the yellow rattle.
Yeah.
That will develop pods like a baby's rattle with the seeds rattling. That's why it's called hay rattle or yellow rattle. And that's semi-parasitic on the grass. So it weakens the grass. So you don't get a dense sward, you get a more open sward where more flowering species can come in. So that's why it's called the meadow maker, because it's an essential ingredient to a successful species-rich meadow.
We can walk over here. Yeah.
Okay.
This was put in 1997. Normie, we want example, please, Norman.
Oh, you're going to... Is he going to...
He's going to...
demonstrate, is he?
Hey, Norm. You'll just climb up. Here, Norm. Normie.
I'll get in the way.
Normie, come on.
Oh, go through the...
Normie, yeah. Norman.
Come on, here.
Come
Here.
on, Norman.
Good boy.
No, yeah.
He's frightened you're going to drop it on him.
Yeah.
Can you get over? Shall I lift him over?
Well, you can come through if you like.
Thank you. Is the brambles in the way for Norman?
Oh,
hang on.
He's very particular. Well, Matilda will
Norman.
be out here.
Yeah.
Come on, look. He knows her. Mommy. That worked, didn't it? Tell her. The people coming to Brimpts, they enjoy the environment. That's key to what we do here. It's the environment. They come in to visit the atmosphere of Dartmoor. It's incredible, you know. It's a privilege enough, one, to live here, I would say, but also two, to share it. And I think you appreciate it more when people come in and enjoy it as much as we do. We got some trails we put in over the farm over many years. We got historical tin mine trails, for instance, which brings in local volunteers to maintain and all that. We've got a new trail, which is not a new trail, it's an old trail we want to redevelop, incorporating this natural capital approach. So important to get the young people on the farm. Well, this is interesting to reinstate. We had the biodiversity trail goes back to 2001, I do believe. And very popular trail with all the school kids and our own people staying here. So it's nice to reintroduce it, really, and there's 25 years on sort of thing to tell the story of what actually has been going on at Brimpts over those years. I think it's important for us because it's, well, with my own blood pressure, I think it might bring it down a bit, I hope, when I walk around it. But I think people want to get out in the environment, but they need a bit of interpretation while they're doing it. We have an open access policy on the farm, but you've got to manage it. I think that's the important key of it. Just don't open your gates and let people wander around. People need to have a little bit of guidance. We've got bridle paths and footpaths through the farm. This particular one will take you around the different environmental areas we have, from hay meadows to wetland, like we got here, to flower meadows and up into the high moorland area. And, you know, it's, and having the interpretation of that will be the key.
Hello, and thank you for coming. My name is Sarah Fearn. I work actually at Imperial College in London, and I'm not a glass artist or a farmer. I'm a scientist. I work in material science specifically. And my core technique is a thing called secondary ion mass spectrometry, where we use this technique for looking at composition of materials. And so this is this talk is really about how it all sort of began. because I started a postdoc back in 2001 at Imperial College, and it was in conjunction with the Victoria and Albert Museum, who have a very large glass collection. And it's very wonderful. I don't know if any of you have been there, and it's very lovely. And within that glass collection, back in 1991, they made an assessment of the materials that they have there, and they noticed that quite a high proportion of their objects were suffering from glass corrosion. So we've got an example of some of the objects that were suffering from this problem. So you've got this Venetian goblet, the pink one on the left-hand side, the German goblet in the middle, and English mold-blown glass on the right-hand side. So within the museum environment, some of their most precious artifacts have this issue with glass corrosion. And this is caused by what's known as the condensation evaporation, where moisture is just sitting on the humidity from the atmosphere that these objects are stored is just sitting on the surface of the objects, and it causes material to leach out of the glass, which then has ultimately can have a mechanical effect leading to failure. So it's a bit different to what you would see happening to a window, which would be condensation runoff, where you've got rainfall hitting the glass and can cause corrosion that way. So it's a very specific form of glass corrosion that's happening with stored objects in humid atmospheres. And so when you're looking at your glass objects, these are the stages that you will see happening during the corrosion process. So you have this foggy and dull surface first appearing on the surface, and it loses its brilliance and clarity. This object here should be nice and clear and transparent. The object can feel wet depending on because of the leachant that's coming out, potassium or sodium-based leachant, so it feels soapy to the touch. You then get these fine lines of cracks appearing through the object called crizzling. So you're structurally now, it's starting to disintegrate a little bit, and again, losing the brilliance of the original object. And these are electron microscope images when you're looking at the surface as it's starting to flake away, because the water goes in underneath and it just causes the spalling effect on the surface of the material. And then you've obviously got mechanical failure at this point, and this leads to objects. So it's a bit of a grey image, but it's now fallen apart because the structure is now fundamentally broken. And all of this happens because of the composition of the glass. So very specific compositions that this happens to. So this is a composition triangle that was developed by a man called Roy Newton quite a long time ago. And on the axes, we've got on one side one that says silicon dioxide. So that's your main former of glass, silicon dioxide, this is the sand. On the bottom axis, you've got this one that's called RO, which is alkali earth metals, which are additives such as calcium, which would be calcium carbonates, maybe bones ground up and put to the sand, which helps to stabilize glass, is a good thing. And then on the left-hand side, we've got R2O, alkali metal oxides, such as your soda, lime, your potash. And these are really good fluxes because they reduce the melting point of your sand. So sand will melt at 1700 degrees Celsius. That's how you can get a glass. Or, you might have seen obsidian, high temperatures from volcanoes. But in order to work sand or glass, we need to lower the temperatures. And this is obviously quite important within the sustainability aspect, which I think Ian will probably talk about. So inadvertently, when people were historically making glasses, they added things to their sand to reduce that melting point. And they noticed that if they added things like the coastal plants, which is what the Venetians used, the Levantine materials, or in Northern Europe, they were using the bracken, what we see here, what we have around here, plant ashes from woods and plants. These things would lower the melting point of the material, so they could melt it. Or it also would change the viscosity, reduce softening temperatures, which means that you'd have working material. One of the disadvantages is if you add too much of the R2O, these soda potash-based fluxes, is that you affect the chemical durability. And it's the increased content of these, which is shown on the region here. So we've got this line, which shows us a region of stability, and everything to the left of that line, these glass compositions will be susceptible to humidity and corrosion. So when the V&A did the assessment back in 1991, looking at their collection, looking at the most at-risk objects, so this was carried out by Victoria Oakley, who is involved with the organisation as well. they found these very interesting compositions. So you can see this red line, these are the high soda-based glasses, and here we've got the high potassium-based glasses. So, and then here's your calcium oxide, which is known to be a stabilizer. So you can see on that green line, the amount of calcium oxide is quite low. And then we've got these two groups. So we have the Northern European, which are the high potash glasses, and the high soda lime glasses, which is your Venetian material. So my job in the postdoc was to look at the corrosion of these materials and try and prevent it or slow it down. So in order to do that, I need some material to work on. And obviously with the ethics within museums, I can't have a museum piece to work on, and it's already corroded. And previous studies, they've always made replica material, but what they've done is they've used chemical grade materials, melted very small batches, and then polished them away, because the analytical techniques that we use afterwards kind of require a nice flat surface to get good measurements. So this is not representative of what we're actually seeing aging in a museum. So I wanted to actually make a replica of a composition and actually get it blown so that we have what's known as the outer skin of the material. Because as a glass blower is working with an object that goes in and out of a glory hole, so the outer layer of the surface is slightly different to the bulk of the material, which means that the actual initial reaction that happens on the skin is really important. So we don't want to remove that, we need to see it. So I thought I need a glass furnace and a glass blower, and I'm at Imperial College in South Kensington, and across the road is the Royal College of Art, where Ian works. So I went over there and tried to convince him that this is what he needed to do. So I managed to convince him. So this is 2002 or 2003. And so using that failed object, I took the composition of the failed object that we can see here, this Façon de Venise glass. So the original composition is listed in the left-hand side. So we can see that there's a high soda content. And I was going to use that as my reference to make what we call replica gas 1, RG1 there. So that's already, I've made some RG1 and I've just checked the analytical composition of it, and we're pretty close to what I want it to be. So we first started making a very small glass batch with that aim, with that compositional aim. So I'm using sand from Loch Aline, which is a glassmaker's sand, very beautiful. It's got a high silica content, a very fine structure, and then just added in the various chemicals such as the soda, the potassium oxide, calcium oxide, to try and get that accurate composition. So we started off with a very small batch, and here is Ian 23 years ago. There we go. So this is at Imperial College in a very shoddy furnace room, and it doesn't look like this anymore. So we kind of made a bit of an ad hoc attempt at making replica glass in these conditions, rather than using the full RCA setup, probably quite rightly, which we'll get to in a minute. But this is a very small batch, so even in this very first attempt, we realised that the small batch isn't working properly. It's not melting properly. The heat isn't getting into the melt properly. We've actually got to scale it up. So the batch is too small. It's not refining properly. We can't really get to do what we want to do. There was no space, poor working conditions. So we decided to scale up to 25 kilogram batches. And we're going to try and do two compositions now, one with the high soda lime and one with the high potash content. So there we've got replica glass 1 and replica glass 3. So we start off foolishly, I don't know why we've started with replica glass 3, we start with a high potash one. And we've got crucibles, so it's all mixed up in a cement mixer to get very good contact over the sand, and we start melting the batch over in the RCA. So there's the heating sequence up to 700 degrees C, everything was looking all right, and then 30 degrees up to 1200, and then the crucible fails. So this is in the furnace of the Royal College of Art. So now, if anybody knows it, Ian, he's panicking. Because this could mean that a lot of students don't now get any work done, because we may have actually destroyed a furnace, because you can see that there's quite extensive damage to that crucible. It's glazed up, but I think maybe, I don't know, you're going to talk a little bit about this? So
it's damaged the pot, it's not really damaged the furnace at all.
So we move on, and Ian's happy to do another day. So we go on to replica glass 1, and this is now the high soda lime glass, and we go on and do the same heating schedule, and this time it works, which is very good. So now he then produces a series of flat plates for me to work on and put into aging cabinets to do the corrosion experiments. But what came out of this was Ian's experience of working with a glass that has been made from the very essence of what it is, the sand, the additives, a different formula that he was completely not used to working with. So these are the very quick objects that he made, and he was absolutely astounded by the workability of the glass. And he wrote a very nice little essay about what he found working with the glass, which I'm going to read one of the first paragraph out, and I don't know whether any of these things are being handed out, hopefully forwarded. But so the glass itself was a revelation. I've always accepted that skill has been lost over time and that it would be impossible for me to achieve the skill needed to produce the fine quality that can be found in the glass collection of the V&A. I now believe that the Italian glassmakers became so expert purely based on the incredible material with which they worked. So he's throwing shade on Venetian glass workers. There we go, very good. So, but it was a really interesting insight into the aspects of the material that he's working with, which at this point meant Ian has now caught the bug. So having worked with this replica glass, it's got Ian thinking about, well, glass is a recyclable material. So using old principles of glassmaking, such as adding plant ashes, why don't we do that to extend the lifetime of waste glass, adding in the plant glass, adding in the plant ashes to recycle the waste glass again. And so this is what, over the 20-year period, we've done some other experiments since, and I've looked at compositions for him, but this has now led to the creation of the Upcycling Glass Company, with the development of the studio, which you've seen up just outside, with his developed furnace. And then just the other week, well, it's just at the end of the summer, we then tried to do what we were aiming to do at the very beginning. We took some window glass as the cullet, just waste window glass, smash that up. For our flux, the additives, we used the ashes from the biomass on Brimpts Farm. So it's already been burnt, so we don't have to burn any further plant ashes. That's already there. We're not adding to any more burning process. And we melted that all down, and we blew some objects. So I called it Wonder Glass. Here's Ian gathering the melt and also dropping it onto the slab to work. And it was successful. So we have these objects produced. They're in the annealing cupboard at the moment. So my side of it is to say, well, hang on a minute, what have we done here? Have we actually changed the glass, the window glass? Is there any toxicity in the biomass ash? So we've just had a look at the composition of, so the key is, WG is the Wonder Glass. That's the material that we made, which is not on display here, but I think up in the studio. So that's the Wonder Glass that we made in the orange. The ash that we added is in the blue, and the cullet, the glass, is in the green. And then I also just analysed a reference glass. It's just a glass microscope slide, which is fundamentally a soda lime glass, just very basic. And so from these plots, you can see that the calcium is very high in the ash, and it is now higher in the Wonder Glass. So it has taken on the calcium, which is a former, which will lower the melting temperature of the glass. So that's really good. We can see that the silicon is there, but it's not too high compared to what you have in the window glass and the reference glass, which would be basically the same composition. So that would lower the melting temperature, which means that you can work it. There's some potash in the plant ashes, as you'd expect, from under here, the potassium, which has gone into the glass, because we can see we've got it here compared to the cullet. There's no potash in the cullet. So we have moved, stuff has gone from the ash into the mix, and the two materials have combined. If we look a little bit further along the periodic table, some other elements, we can see that the ash had quite a high content of the iron with the Fe there, which is now represented in the new glass as well. Interestingly, a bit of strontium here, on the ash, and quite a bit of manganese as well. And for the last 4 elemental species, we can see that there are things that were only in the ash which are now in the Wonder Glass that we've created. So there's definitely been an effect of these. These have definitely worked together and mixed, and we've been able to recycle the waste glass. And this is what Ian produced. So it's been successful. We've been able to show that we can mix these things together and extend the longevity of maybe waste glass, particularly window glass that is just thrown away, using ash from the biomass, which is readily there. As Andy pointed out, it's got quite a lot of it to get rid of. So the glass melt could be used to blow very beautiful objects. This is just one day's work, so quite stunning, really. And obviously, adding different additives to this, we could decolorize it or change the colour. And so that's been my involvement with the project so far, and I shall now hand you over to Ian to continue.
I'm not going to do mine. I'm going to present on behalf of Dr. Katie Shanks first, so I'll just minus that a sec. Katie couldn't be with us, unfortunately, but I've got some slides from her, and we have done a number of talks recently. I'm not going to spend very long on this, and I'm not going to do it justice. But as well as working with window glass, which is not recycled, we only recycle container glass, effectively. We've also got a situation where we're going to have to handle all our solar panels as they come to the end of their life. And they are, well, I'll explain it as we go through. So I'll just start this from the beginning. So I am not Dr. Katie Shanks, but I met Katie working with Art and Energy many years ago. And her expertise is in photovoltaics applications. I'm really interested in the fact that she's talking about solar concentrators, because we've got electric furnaces, and what we can do is use these photo-concentrated systems to have free power to run things like a glassworks, and that would be ideal. I'm also interested in being on this farm because there's methane, and I can run that furnace on methane. I can put a CO2 recapture system, which I promised I wouldn't talk about, but we can end up with free energy, and we can tidy the place up while we're doing it. I'm going to carry on with this, though. We did a talk recently, Katie, myself, and a chap called Matt Burnell from a company called Resolar. Matt has been looking at taking these panels, and we've been working on ways of splitting the glass from them and finding uses for it. And we actually presented to the Engineering and Physics Sciences Research Council recently. So I've just lifted some of these slides from that on behalf of Katie. Now, these solar panels are crammed with antimony. I say crammed, it's got enough in there to be a worry. Back in the 90s, they banned lead in glass. So the Chinese, who've produced all of our solar panels, I would imagine, or many of them, replaced it with antimony. I can't tell you, hand on heart, how much antimony and how dangerous it is, but it's 10 times worse than lead. It's a lot worse than lead. It's worse than arsenic. And these panels, our solar panels, are loaded with it. And they're going to go to landfill, just the same as our window glass. End-of-life building glass goes to landfill, because it's too expensive to process it. Large industry can't do that. They can't afford the logistics to do that. But me and a hammer can, on a farm. I can sit there and quite effectively smash up bits of glass. But this is what got me interested in working with Katie, was A, the possibility of, we've got some solar concentrators over there to make them for her, and B, trying to solve this issue of what we're going to do with all of this horrendously toxic glass when it hits our landfill. And there you see, she's done this, Upcycled glass, being part of the answer of how we can do it. We can take waste, it can come into the farm, into Upcycled Glass Company. We're actually now physically making the designs that she's had in mind for years and years, but nobody's been able to give her one. Nobody's been able to make one of these for her. So that's exactly what I did, working alongside Katie, is to actually produce the prototypes, and that will then hopefully go into production. My idea has always been that we're going to have a number of sites, small setups, and scale is the issue. If we can't deal with these masses and mountains of end-of-life building glass and solar panels, a very small unit can work in the local area and just take the solar panels as they come in. We can smash them up and we can make solar concentrators. We can make beautiful objects. We can then have another life for it. The antimony is still in there, it doesn't bleach out. We're not actually creating glass from batch, and we're not putting emissions into the air, we're just reheating it and reshaping it. At the end of that second life, it can go to an art college to be used for casting, because in changing the nature of this, we've processed this stuff, made it softer so it flows like lead crystal. And now it's a really good, valuable material for students to use and artists to use to cast into. This is probably not what Katie would say, but this is what I see. Sorry, I'll carry on. And this is us basically casting into a CNC milled piece of graphite that I've made myself, because I do a little bit of CAD work as well as the glass work. And also I made a quite complex two-part mold to make these. And it's just, you take the lid off it basically, and you take these little tiny kind of solar concentrators. Now what we can get with this is like a magnifying glass, concentrating the rays of the sun. Instead of your solar cell being this big, we can get the same amount of power out of one that big, using one of these round things which take the sun from any direction and direct it straight into the solar cell. I love that. I think that's fantastic because it gives me the opportunity now to run my furnaces, all my gear, and also it gives me something to do with this waste, somewhere to channel it to. And this is myself and Katie and Matt actually making the blanks and some frogs, which are in the back as well, because we've got to do something else with it, and the solar concentrators as well, the components. These are very small batch pieces, obviously, but they work. What I've done, of course, is I've actually just cleaned the bottom there, ground the base, and so that's as they come out of the furnace. A little bit of cold work on there, and you've got your solar prototypes. They wouldn't be manufactured like this, but they could be. We could sit there in a unit as small as this and make prototype objects for new technologies and new power sources, let's say, green initiatives. This is the one that I can kind of point to and not know much about, but I can tell you that one of these is lead crystal, which is obviously an optical glass. It's an expensive glass, and the lead is, let me have a look at this, if I can see which one it is. Yeah, it's the red one, I think. Yeah, so the red one is good all the way around. Yeah, some of them are really not so good here, but good at the top on this side. This is the angle of the sun, by the way. But the red one is what we're aiming for. We've made two glass types. It's crushed up solar panel glass mixed with a standard studio cullet, so the waste from a studio process. And also I've mixed it with old lead glass that have come from basically waste objects that we've identified. So I'm actually using commercial waste and mixing the PV glass into it. One of them is, let me just check now, is the brown one, and the other one is the blue one. So the blue one is better than lead crystal on this side of the range of angles, and the other one is better than lead crystal on the opposite side. So it's comparable. It's not as good, but if you put one of each and one of each and one of each, and you fill a field full of that, imagine what power you could produce, and it would be more efficient than lead crystal. What we've done with waste is actually produce something that is very, very valuable in terms of the material. I think what we've done anyway. But that's kind of what Katie has been doing. She's been measuring this. So we've actually got some tangible evidence rather than me saying, well, that looks shiny, which is as far as a craftsperson like myself can go. And I think the strength of this is basically Katie, Sarah, myself, Andy, and the other people within Upcycled Glass that have actually created something that I'm extremely proud of. I'm going to go on to mine now, if that's okay. So if I close that down, I should be able to find me. And it's slideshow from beginning. There you go. and I've got some notes on here. I'm really sorry, I'm going to whiz through it as fast as I can. Hopefully it won't be too dull for you. So I started my career at Pilkington Glass in 1981. And I normally show us a picture of Pilks. And there's Pilks. That's a furnace. That's a float glass furnace. And it actually was based at Cowley Hill. And I served my time as an apprentice craft engineer and craftsman. Now that meant, because it's 200 years old, the factory, we didn't know what we were going to be working on. We didn't know what we were. I was kind of a plumber, but also pneumatics and hydraulics and anything that came in front of us, we weren't trained for. So they didn't bother training us for specific things. They gave us autonomy of purpose. That's where I was trained to. And it's a very common thing back then in the 80s in factories that a problem presents itself to you and you basically decide how you're going to deal with it. And you've got a range of kind of skills that they teach you, and you get these tacit experiences and so on. So craft, for me, is very much linked to the glass industry initially. And I put the Otties in this as well, because I first started getting involved with Pilks in the 70s when I went fishing, because this is Pilkington Glass, and they used to take from the River Sankey, they used to take the water to cool the furnaces, and then it'd come back out in a spray. And as an apprentice, I worked on those, fixing the sprays. But we were also I used to catch angelfish because the pet shop, when it went bust, they dumped all the fish in the water because it was so hot. They thrived. This is in the mid-80s. Anyway, that's just I'm going to go. But that heat exchanger thing with the water, that kind of stayed with me. When it comes to efficiency, Pilkington Glass were working on stuff years and years and years ago in terms of reusing energy. So it was all about heat exchanging and that kind of thing. So that kind of stuck with me as well. I ended up at the Royal College of Art. God knows how I got there, but I ended up at the RCA, as Sarah said, and I met Sarah, and it completely changed everything. Because I'd spent years teaching students after I graduated, and we just brought the glass in. And I'd never mixed glass myself. And it was Sarah that kind of gave me that, hang on a minute, you can change this. You can actually put ingredients in. And immediately, the thing for me is you could take window glass, which cannot be recycled because it's too high. It's 14 to 1600 degrees you need. Our furnaces can't get to that. But if you added something to it, you could bring that temperature down. And of course, right across, as Sarah said, right across the road is the V&A and the Imperial College. And that kind of, that was a fantastic opportunity. And a couple of pieces of glass that I made as well. This, around about 2000, when I was working with Sarah, I also worked with an artist, and I was very fortunate. I worked with Eduardo Palazzi. I was going to say I wasn't collaborating, I was just doing odd jobs for him, really. But also Michael. The size of the glass, each bead is about the size of a human head, so it's quite a big piece of work, but that was using techniques that are thousands of years old. Now, the latest job I did for him was 2025. He brought a shoe in, I 3D scanned it, and then I did CAD work, and I created this, and I gave it to Amy Whittingham, who's amazing, and she cast the glass to produce a glass slipper. Still working in glass, but you can see I'm working in a whole range of things, from a 2,000-year-old process to new technologies. Yeah, I think I've covered enough of that. After the RCA, I went to Team Valley Glass Studios, and I designed a whole load of stuff, very proud of it. So proud in our first year. We were losing money, and when I took over, we won a design award for the one on the top left there. And we beat Dartington Crystal and Poole Pottery, and I'm a big fan of Dartington Crystal and Poole Pottery, so that's cool. This is quite interesting. 10 years at the RCA, in ceramics and glass, I invented a whole load of surfaces, substrates, surface substrates that fit on glass. So this is a ceramic luster. This looks like metal, but it fits on the glass. We'll come back to that in a bit. And then I ended up at the Arts University Plymouth, teaching professional studies because I did so well at TVG. And I built my first small furnace based on a 17th century idea of sticking it all together. And I'm very interested, obviously, in making and conserving not just the objects, but you can see the influence that Sarah's had on me in terms of what I'm actually making. And I'd also point out the person blowing the glass there is actually in the corner. That's my son, Jordan. And next to him is Jamie, is also part of Upcycled Glass. And there I am working away. And that was at Dartington Cider Press in 2012. It's proof that it works, that the furnace idea works. It's 70% more efficient than a standard furnace, only because you can turn it off at the end of the day, and you turn it on in the morning, and it's up to temperature in 3 hours. So that's that. I then went to the Fab Lab. I said went to that, it didn't exist. We had one laser cutter and a 3D printer, and like an idiot, I decided I'm going to be the Fab Lab manager. So I built that up myself to start with, and then we had a team of people that far surpassed me in terms of their knowledge and experience, and we developed Fab Lab Southwest. And you can see what I'm doing here is I'm looking for ways to keep my craft that I love so much alive. Because we were told way back at the RCA by a chap called Dan Klein that the days of glass blowing are over, that it's no longer financially possible to be a glass blower and make money. And ever since then, I've been trying to kind of find ways of making it possible. One of the ways I thought was maybe go down this idea of new technologies. So this isn't real. This is basically a CAD drawing that I've basically played around with and rendered. So I got quite good at this CAD-GAM thing. And anything we 3D print, we can cast in glass. Because the 3D print material, it's plastic, and it melts at 200 degrees. So if you think of that as wax, instead of 3D print, and you go back 2,000 years, and you think about casting that the way that lost wax casts, and you combine the new technologies with my 2,000-year-old practice, you can get some really incredible things. And even corporate stuff. And that's actually, again, CAD. I've used just a simple thing to make a stencil, which I've sandblasted through the color, and it goes back in the heat, and it ends up as a really quite elaborate, tall, Liverpool-based thing. So I'm looking for ways to kind of be more financially sustainable. And what's happening at the same time, almost by accident, as I'm becoming more environmentally sustainable at the same time. So whilst at the Fab Lab, I provided technical support, Jenny, for art and energy. Loved it. Absolutely loved these people. They weren't about making money, they were about making a difference. Very, very influential on me. And one of the things we did is I introduced them to I did a couple of workshops at the Biennale. It's like the Glass Biennale, what they call the International Festival of Glass, thank you. And so we went there and we were making solar panels that create artwork that creates energy. I also worked for Tim up here, designing for his brewery and trying to make, it's a bit like going back to Pilks now. Remember about the C.I.C canal and the water going in and out? I figured, well, you could have a cooling tower that big for big industry, but if you're a small business, you could make one, a small one. And this is a filter to go into a cooling system for a small brewery, and that was established. And so was the CO2 recapture system. Because at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I can stick this on my furnace. If I run on methane, and I get a CO2 capture system on the combustion gases alone, the only emission I'm going to have is water. That's possible. What I need is a farmer. So go to the next. But yeah, and what Tim did is he taught me all about his brewery was full of repurposed stuff. He didn't buy materials, he just got them from what was around. So I used 2 of these water things, and I actually constructed a water tower with that filter inside and had the same kind of thing as Pilks had. So as the water goes out, it gets sprayed on the filter, and all the hot air goes out, the water goes down, it goes back into the brewery and gets recycled. Before that, he was just, all the hot water was getting wasted. So it's quite a nice thing there as well. And I've also done some seaweed glass. I built a furnace in Cornwall for Abigail Reynolds because she found out that way back in 1600s, 1700s, I think it was, there was a glass sector in Cornwall using sand and seaweed. So we made that just with sand and seaweed, nothing else. There's a little sample there of the first batch. I was amazed. Just sand and seaweed together. And it was a dream to work with. It wasn't, our new glasses, they're designed by people who've never touched glass in their life. They're designed by people who sell glass in our consumer world. So the glass is thick and it's difficult, and you put it in the heat and it smashes. This stuff doesn't. It's like proper food after you had processed food for years. It's amazing to work with this stuff. But again, what I wanted to do with this is to go back to this idea of the substrates. And I can now make coral and grow coral. I can make a surface substrate designed for coral to grow on it, and I can make it onto objects made out of sand and seaweed. And when the sand and seaweed finally corrodes into the ocean, it's only going to be the biomaterials from that environment in the first place. So that might not work because you've got heat destroying it anyway. But what about maybe mussels and clams and so on sheets of glass made here that can be put into rivers, and then they could be grown, and that could filter the water after our water companies have destroyed it. So that could be filtered. And then the mussels themselves, you can smash it up and make glass with it because it's got silica and it's got soda and it's got a stabilizer in it, apparently. You can make a glass with it. It's amazing once you start and have these multi-layered possibilities, let's say. And that's where we come to phoning Andy up or emailing Andy and said, do you fancy having a glassworks on your, in your workshop? And so I didn't have any money, and so we had to raise money, so we did a crowdfunder. And I have to say, I am really, really pleased in terms of what we achieved there. I only had to raise five grand from friends and family, and Devon County Council matched it. So they put another 5. And with that 10 grand, we built the workshop you see outside, and with a lot of help and support from Andy and Gabrielle, of course, from Brimpts Farm. So yeah, that was 2021. There's our page there with Andy, myself, and this wonderful chap, Richard Glass, is the manager of Team Valley Glass, and he's part of this Upcycled Glass company. So he's supplying us with his waste material. So the commercial waste coming from Team Valley Glass, it's food safe. So that's what we make the tumblers out of for Make Southwest, knowing that it's food safe as well. And he's also been incredibly supportive to the whole project. So this is the whole gang. Myself, Richard I mentioned, Andrew you've met. Jamie is actually my son, head of nepotism, we joked. But he helped me out by building the website. Don't blame him. I've not changed it in 4 years. It's not his fault. But he's also kind of done some work with AI and with schools, teaching about circular economies. Katie, I've mentioned. Sarah, you've met. And finally, Victoria Oakley, who Sarah mentioned, who was conservation at the V&A. And incredibly helpful everybody's been. This is quickly, Be World Class is what Jamie's been working on. And it just shows he's going into schools. They've got about 140 odd schools, I think, signed up to this. AI being used, I think, for a better purpose than trying to make money, to spread the word about circular economies. This is the type of thing I've been making. The ones on the left, we make primarily for Make Southwest, and thank you, Make Southwest, for continuing to order them throughout. And you can see I start off with the bubbly glass. I light my furnace in the morning, start working almost straight away when it's up to temperature, like 3 hours later. And then around about 4 or 5 hours into it, the glass is good enough to make the tumblers. And then after about 6 hours, it's actually refined and we can make some really beautiful stuff. We could melt overnight and get perfect glass, but I don't like to do that. I prefer to work with bubbles and get as much out as I can. And the whole idea is when I was at the RCA, all my friends were forced, and myself included, I think, we were all forced into making more and more expensive things. Back in the 90s, you could make paperweights and you could make tumblers and things and wine glasses, and we could sell them. But the problem is that with cheap imports, public opinion, they won't go for that. They want something cheaper and better and so on. So we're forced to further and further away from that core making functional things into much more craft, contemporary craft, and even into fine art. And to me, that's a bit difficult for me, because coming from my educational background, I didn't go searching for meaning for my craft. I went searching for relevance for my craft. Because back in the old days, before the Industrial Revolution, our society was dependent on craft. A fisherman would need to build their boat and make the net and go out to catch fish to survive. Whereas now I feel that craft has almost lost a relevance. I've said the word. I can't even say it again. It's lost that kind of place within society, the necessity. So what I'm thinking about doing is making objects, decorative objects, functional objects, and objects of necessity through my craft. And the craft itself being the conduit between science and farming and all of those, the kind of multi-layered possibilities. We're actually producing multi-layered solutions for the environmental problems that we're looking at. To be able to make things on a site using waste glass and tidy the place up while we're doing it environmentally, and find that new approach of making that we so desperately need, because we can't be buying in from China. We haven't actually used any, we haven't had a truck. I actually take all my work to Make Southwest in bags and wrap it up in paper. We've had no packaging. We've had no trucks on the road. We've had no deliveries, because I pick up the work myself from Richard. We're actually creating a circular economy here. We're actually creating a very strong circular model, let's say, built on respect, I think, and of love of my craft and love of the environment and what we're doing. What we've achieved, I think, I'm going to have to read this out, I'm sorry it's boring. A new community-owned and community-funded business model unites environmental cleanup with the craft of glassblowing, revitalizing my endangered craft and dying craft, if I was very honest with you, and connecting it directly to local well-being and meaningful climate action. So I'm searching for relevance. I can still do artwork and I can still search for meaning in my work, but I also need to make it count, make it matter to people. The development of cross-sell sector, local circular economy network of SMEs and other organizations. Well, I've got to say, this is the most exciting thing, to be able to talk alongside a farmer and talk alongside a scientist. Because if I was talking about glass, I would be telling you how it feels. Sarah can tell you what we actually achieved. She can prove what we've achieved. Katie can actually show you graphs that the optical glass that we've developed is comparable to lead crystal optically. What we can do now is incredible because of that group and cross-sector kind of model, let's say. A centre for practical evidence-based research. I'm rubbish at writing. I can't do an application form, which is why I love the idea of Make Southwest, looking at applications for further funding and so on, but I can make stuff. I can get ideas of things that will work and make them work, because I'm going back to my apprenticeship, autonomy of purpose. You've got a problem in front of you, you solve it. And you do whatever you can within the resources you have to be able to solve it. And the establishing of new glassmaking startups. We've got Kate in here back there. I really do hope you get involved and not only learn more about glassblowing, but learn how to build your own furnace and learn how to be sustainable and start your own. And we can kind of make this count. What's now possible? A sustainable furnace system. I designed that system. It's not designed for propane, it's designed for methane. So it might be possible, perhaps, to run it on biomethane. To dig a big pit, and put all the mess from all the farms around in there. We can run one tiny furnace out of that, and we can put a CO2 capture system on it, and the only emission coming out of that combustion system would be water. That would be wonderful. And the CO2 we capture goes to a brewery free of charge, and they use it to either move the beer back or carbonate the beer. So we're not having to buy in CO2 from Russia or wherever it is we're dependent on. The multi-layered solutions. There's so much more I could tell you about, but I would bore you senseless, I'm sure. Where did I get? Only the first one, oh my goodness. The creation of a network of sustainable glass. Yeah, I turned down the possibility of major funding, Innovate UK, because I don't want somebody to be the director that comes along and then owns everything because they've invested heavily. I don't want the shape of this to be about making money and growth. What I tried to say to them, you can grow this because McDonald's isn't big, but you could put a waste management centre on every site up and down the country with a free glasswork next to it that's just benefiting from the waste management system, let's say. So it is possible, I think, to have a situation where you've got zero material costs, zero energy costs, no packaging. We could actually get an order from John Lewis's, and I'll just take it in plastic bags or paper bags and stuff to the local John Lewis in my area. And just like the Fab Lab, as one tiny workshop, but we're all around the world. Fab Labs are connected. There's a massive network, and we rely on each other when we get stuck. I'm closer to Barcelona than I ever was to Exeter in terms of getting help and the people I know. We could do the same thing. We could have waste management systems up and down the country, and not just glassblowing. Loads of crafts could actually benefit from using that, the materials and the energy possibilities. We've got establishments of carbon positive circular economy workshops within a network. I've said that, haven't I? Sorry. Open source dissemination of knowledge. Yeah, everything's free. I'm not going to try and patent things. I'm not going to try and keep everything to myself. Everything I do and everything I've learned, I'm actually going to make open source so that anybody can do this. And that stops that situation where you've got one person like a Mr. Musk comes along and buys it and keeps it all to himself. And it won't ever grow into a sustainable environmental solution. It'll become part of the growth thing that's all about making money. So that's not what it's about. So I'm hoping that working with Make Southwest, the possibilities for funding now don't have to come from industry. It don't have to come from natural places. It could come from a whole kind of range of sectors, from farming to craft to education to new technologies to new startups to environmental cleanups, all of that, all kind of linked together. There is tremendous possibility, I think, for a potential for growth, let's say. This is my conclusion. Thankfully, I've finished. At the Fab Lab, we created, because it wasn't me. It was Arch University Plymouth, of course, that gave the money to build that Fab Lab. But I built it up, basically, by wheeling it all in and teaching myself how to use it. And when a solution didn't exist, we actually designed equipment or machines or processes to make it happen. And at the core of that is my apprenticeship, is that autonomy of purpose that I was taught at my apprenticeship in Pilkington Glass, is just use what you can, you know, and make it work. And you've got your feet on the ground and your head in the clouds at the same time. It's wonderful. And I personally believe that in our eagerness to actually move more in towards science and technology is not going to save us. It's going to make us drive more efficiently and quickly into disaster, because it's all about growth. Growth is about using the resources, and it's about digging things up out of the ground. I'm talking about we're losing the practicability to transfer ideas into tangible, achievable outcomes, things that work. Do you remember smart motorways? How much money went into smart motorways? Millions and millions of pounds. And then you realize, hang on a minute, this is stupid, because they never asked a driver and a pickup truck, would you actually go into that lane, pull in front of a car, come back, hook them up and take them? No, it's too dangerous, because you've got two trucks who can't move. And people were getting killed because trucks were going straight through. That's the problem we've got. We're thinking about things on paper. We're not actually using practical, simple rationality when we come about what are we going to do about the climate. The business model unites innovation with a deep respect for the traditional and historical craftsmanship, recognized both as essential to realizing creative and innovative ideas, and that fusion of contemporary craft and local waste management systems has a potential to become a catalyst for the sustainable circular production models. Our future depends on that. It's a mouthful, but it basically means don't forget that old stuff. Don't forget the stuff that we depended on for our livelihoods. Just because we can kind of go more towards the technology, it's not always the answer. The answer is that and the simplicity of ideas and trying to make things that will actually work. So I'm going to say thank you to all the people there, and of course Andy and Gabrielle there. And there's a piece of glass there with an optical piece of glass on the top that's been cut through with a water jet cutter. I'd like to give you that just as a gift. I think that's the finest piece of glass I've ever made. Just, I don't know why, there's something about it. It's not decorative and it's not kind of art or anything like that. It's just a glass bottle, but it's all yours if you want it. And to every single person who's donated money, the C.I.C is now being wound up. There's no need for it because the C.I.C was about proving that we can do it. We've done it. I'd love to see what's going to happen next. So I'm going to hand the keys over. We'll probably do it more formally in a bit, but Emmy's at the back there. I'm going to hand the keys to Emmy Palmer. Would you like to come forward, Emmy? Or would you like to just hide? Because the idea, of course, is that's yours. Emmy's going to run a co-op based here. Do you want to say something? Or? No. Okay, that's fine. I think that's me then. Yeah, so thank you very, very much. And I think we're going to do questions and answers and things, yeah. Do you want to make yourself comfortable? I'm going to go sit back down. Okay, take the keys with you. Should we stand at the front or sit at the front, or should we just kind of sit where we are? Is that okay? You had a question, Kyle?
I did. So, your glass for the solar panels, you say you don't want to industrialise them or bring in the big industries. How are you going to get the big industries to use them? Or is that just not thought about yet?
Well, you can make, I mean, over in the corner there, we've got Jenny. She's making solar panels. Why does it have to be big industry that makes everything? Why couldn't it be a kind of a business that structure that is more regional to produce solar panels? I mean, you know, we can make so much. We can actually have it on a trailer and follow in the sun. You know, that kind of, we could be much more efficient. But yeah, I can see what you mean. And also, I know very well that Katie and Matt are probably talking to major industrial processing things at the moment, and that's fine. I'm not talking about replacing industry at all. I'm just talking about doing something as well. You know, this is positive rebellion.
I was going to say this is better.
It can be, but I've got no objection for Katie and Matt to take that to a company and get them mass produced, because it's going to do some good. And I've got no objection to consumerism, because if we turn our back on consumerism, we're lost, because we kind of need that food and stuff that comes out of it. So this idea of a kind of positive rebellion is, yeah, I'm doing this instead, and I'm going to be stubborn enough to stick at it. But we could make them here. We could make them in small batches. But I think it needs to be a fairly big company that would be producing those, because, yeah, this is just the, what do you call it, prototype development stage. I've got them to that stage, and that's all I have to do. They could take that and they could make it massive. I don't really mind, as long as they're using waste rather than digging up the earth to get more and more materials to make those things, I think. Yeah. Has anyone else got any questions?
I have another question.
Andy?
Andy.
Yeah.
I saw that you've got natural rainforest, old woodlands. There's a real small amount in this country, isn't there? Are you planning on expanding that?
Well, we planted over 10,000 trees ourselves just on this farm. And, you know, you look at the Woodland Trust and all these organisations, a massive campaign to plant more. We've got climate change. You know, I'm a motorcyclist. I've been riding through Portugal in the last fortnight. And one place I rode for an hour through a burnt forest. Just completely devastated. Acres, it's phenomenal. So we've got climate change coming. So we've been sowing acorns and all sorts, just a natural environment. I'm a farmer by heart, but I also know that the environment is key. And you know, I'm one of 6. I've got 5 brothers and sisters, and I've got 2 farming in Canada and all that sort of stuff. When you see the scale of farming out there and the reliance on oil, all this consumerism, and just the sheer scale of everything, it does worry me. But small acorns. I set up a wood fuel cooperative group in 2007, and now we're producing a renewable fuel for over 60 local boilers on some quite a big scale. And we save 150 tonnes of carbon dioxide just on our own farm here. But that's a local generation. We've got a use for those trees when we planted, so it's that circular economy. We now nearly turn over £1 million just on that biomass side, and that's employing local people in the middle of Dartmoor. That's going to be a good industry for the future. It's reliant on pump priming with subsidies to get these things going, but at the end of the day, it's got to be sustainable, and so the environment's key. So yes, I love the environment, the forestry, very keen on, but I use it as well as part of our living, which is important. It's nice to look at. Dartmoor is not just a place to visit and think, well, that's very cute. It is an economy, and it's important, and it should be for local people as much as individual. That's why we have an open access policy and all the rest of that. We're doing all the work. But that's why I welcome the ideas out of the box completely. Ian comes along, I thought, what a fruitcake. But but then when I listened to Sarah and everybody else, I thought, I know nothing. And so it's great to be involved. So yes, thank you.
I'm setting up a contemporary craft hub in Camborne, and for me my passion is keeping craft alive, and it's ceramics and glass predominantly. It is warm glass as opposed to hot glass, but when you talked about art glass for casting, I got very excited, and it not coming from America and it being recycled. Is that on the books?
Yeah, I mean, the colour that we've got, accidentally, I have to say, I just wanted to know what would happen if we took Andy's biomass material, and there was manganese and there was iron in there, which of course has made it the darkest brown. But we're actually generating colour through processing Richard's waste. If you just put it all in together, it'll always be blue, because cobalt oxide is so much more strong. Just a thimbleful will actually make a huge pot almost black. It's that dark. I don't need to dig up cobalt oxide. I can just get a load of waste, throw it in, it'll always be blue. If I take the blue out, it's green. If I process it just a little bit more, I can make it virtually clear. If I can add manganese, and if I can add manganese from a natural source, I can make it clear if it's green. If you go further, it'll go purple. So you can have a whole range of colours, and it's all going to be compatible because it's in the same pot. So we could take blanks out and make colours basically without having to buy from anywhere. And we can't, I mean, sorry. Yeah, well, they'll all be compatible because they're all in the same base glass. So you're actually, it's going back. And a lot of people, when they do glass blowing, the colours break because they think compatibility. They've got like a 60, I can't remember, is it 64, 62, something like that. But there's a number that's your compatibility number. And if you're within 2 points of that, then it's compatible. But if you've got one that side and one that side, they're not compatible with each other. So you've got all sorts of problems with things breaking, even though it's sold to you as compatible. But if you actually build yourself a little furnace for 500 quid and throw in your own colours in there, the whole thing is going to be compatible. As long as you don't go too far out, because I've got Sarah who can tell me if I go too far out. Sorry, yeah. But yeah, the potential is just through the roof, what we can do, without having to buy in. I mean, it's £4,000 a tonne now to get bomber, and it comes from Sweden, does it? Bomber? Yeah, I mean, your glass is coming from America, but Richard's glass is coming, because there's nobody in this country who makes glass to sell. So why not make it out of windows? Why not make it out of windows and ash from bracken? Because that is going to be brilliant, because that's what the Romans used to do to get the glass. They use that ash. So why not? Treat the...
to get the range of colours.
You can get a range of colours, yeah. I can, hand on heart say, I can give you a range of colours, but it's like Henry Ford, as long as it's black. I can give you blues, greens, purples, whites. I can give you all of those things that you think of when you think of old glass. So if you think about Egyptian, the green, the yellow, they're all from natural things putting in that are easy to do. You try and make a red, just like ceramics. You try and make an orange in ceramics or a yellow, it burns out. Same thing, I made the most beautiful red you've ever seen in your life, where it was at the bottom of the pot and the clear glass was above it. I just couldn't get it to mix, because you do need laboratory conditions for those pristine colours and so on. But, you know, what can I say? The more we do, the more we learn. I'll probably figure it out.
I think I'd like to comment as well. It's interesting because modern technology and analysis and all that, you know, you might question, I burn lots of wood. I think that's wrong. The efficiency of our boilers now are probably 85 to 90%. And the ash we produce is only 1% of the material we burn. So the efficiency of that, so you don't want to be sort of think, you know, mums with lungs and we're polluting the atmosphere and whatnot. The technology is there to develop, so we can use an ancient craft, modernise it with the, you know, the skills of Sarah and everybody to look at the technical work and take it forward. And that's what I find really interesting as well, of course.
Side business and making a lamp working glass. It's expensive.
Sorry?
I said you've got a side business of making a lamp working glass.
There's potential for lots of people to do lots of things, which is why it has to be given away free. Because I've only got a finite amount of time on this planet, and I do intend to go travelling, you know, because my wife has put up with me for too long talking about glass. I think she deserves a slightly different life, yeah. The potential is endless, and if you give it away, you could have this growing everywhere around the world with people trying things out, you know. So yeah, why not?